This video is brought to you by Brilliant. Despite pioneering music streaming and dominating the market, Spotify's business model sucks. This isn't coming from some Apple Music loyalist or something either. I've been a Spotify Premium subscriber for a while now, but Spotify is currently tying itself in knots, trying to find a way of making their truly terrible business model slightly better. A struggle which has seen the company sink over $1 billion into podcasting, for little, if any, return. So let's dive into it. Why is the streaming music business such a bad one to be in? And how, despite kickstarting a podcasting arms race, Spotify has still come out losing? The first digital player to truly revolutionize the music industry was Apple, the iPod, and iTunes. Launched back in 2001, the iTunes model truly shook up the music industry, replacing physical purchases with digital downloads, breaking up the album and offering an a la carte musical experience. However, with the new entry of iTunes and MP3 players, the market for stolen downloads also ramped up, with millions choosing to illegally download songs for the first time. Compared to that, Spotify looked like a savior for the music industry. The company was pioneering a pretty new model, allowing people to pay a monthly subscription and then stream whatever they wanted. Sure, there were other music streaming services before them, but Spotify allowed you unlimited streams of whatever songs you wanted, something pretty much no one had done before. The model, while obviously still pricier than piracy, was far more convenient, something that clearly mattered, with them quickly picking up users as we entered a new decade. Alongside companies like Netflix, who followed the Spotify model for streaming video a year later, the company was able to completely change our relationship with media, although maybe not for the better. Spotify's rental model was extremely popular. Today, they boast 551 million active users, orders of magnitude higher than their second-place rival, Apple Music. Of those, 205 million subscribers pay for Spotify Premium, a service which costs $9.99 in the US. Even when accounting for various student, family, and geographic discounts, that's still a ton of money each month. So, how can I possibly be so bold to say that their business model sucks, especially as Spotify infamously doesn't even pay artists all that much per stream? That's a lot of money going in, and surely not much going back out again. Well, not exactly. It's true that Spotify doesn't pay all that much per song streamed, with estimates placing the figure between 0.3 and 0.5 cents per stream, less than many of their rival streamers. But the issue for Spotify isn't the cost per stream, it's the business model at play. Let's compare them to Netflix again. Netflix pays a flat rate for their content, with them spending a staggering $16.84 billion on content in 2022. The difference is that it doesn't matter how many hours of content you watch, that cost for Netflix doesn't change. In fact, they have a real incentive to get you to watch as much as possible. The more you watch, the happier you are with your subscription, the more likely you are to promote their service, more likely you are to tolerate price hikes, and more likely you are to pay more for extra devices or higher quality streaming. Netflix actively wants you to consume as much as possible. Spotify's model works differently. They too want you to be happy with your subscription, but the issue is that their content bill isn't static. The more you stream music, the more it costs Spotify. That might not sound like a big deal when you consider the fraction of a cent that Spotify pays per stream, but it does add up pretty fast, with it estimated that the company sends about 70% of subscription fees to artists, labels, and studios. That's before we account for their myriad other costs, including staffing, marketing, PR, artist engagement, label management, UX, content hosting, design, legal, etc., etc., etc. Now, of course, Netflix also has many of these costs too, but unlike Netflix, Spotify earns less the more that users like their product. Not only that, but Spotify's content fundamentally lacks differentiation. The catalogue on Spotify is pretty much identical to what you'd find anywhere else. There was a time when some music was only available on some streaming services, but by and large, in 2023, all music is available on all services, very unlike Netflix and the video streamers. This has forced Spotify into an awkward corner. They have to develop new products which their customers like, although that could lead to more streams and more costs. And they also have to differentiate themselves from competitors who have exactly the same track list. To solve this problem, Spotify attempted to turn to a new medium for them: podcasts. The opportunity here was threefold. Firstly, Spotify spotted a real gap in the podcasting market. Despite being a rapidly growing medium, consumed disproportionately by educated and higher income people, the market for podcast ads was surprisingly underdeveloped. That's in large part due to a lack of information. Unlike video streams or social media engagement, it was really hard to track who listened to which shows and for how long. Spotify thought that using their huge volumes of user data, they could better track podcasts and, with that information, set up an advertising business to help podcasters better market and sell ads. Second, they hoped that podcasts could solve their core rental problem. Unlike music, they didn't need to pay anyone when listeners streamed podcasts. So, for once, more engagement didn't mean more cost. They also thought it could solve their differentiation problem. By bringing studios and talent in-house, they could make Spotify a destination. They might not be able to have exclusive music, but they could launch exclusive podcasts, forcing fans to sign up. Spotify's CEO really believed in this vision too, saying in 2019 that "We believe that over time, more than 20% of all listening on Spotify will be non-music content, and we strongly believe that this opportunity in audio starts with podcasting." So, with this vision in place, Spotify invested approximately $1 billion in podcasting, including approaching $500 million on production companies Gimlet, The Ringer, and Parcast, $140 million on podcast publishing platform Anchor, $100 million to bring in the biggest podcaster in the world, Joe Rogan, and more than $50 million to produce new shows with the Obamas, Harry and Meghan, and Kim Kardashian. This admittedly did kind of work. Spotify went from 0 podcast listeners in 2015 to 100 million today. They became the biggest podcast publisher in the US. They kickstarted an arms race in the podcasting industry and arguably brought it to new levels of profitability. The thing is, it just hasn't been profitable for them. Sure, they had some successes, but since their spending spree, the once popular Archetypes, hosted by Meghan Markle, was canned after less than a year. The Obamas left their deal to join Audible, owned by rival Amazon, and Spotify fired hundreds of people at the podcasting studios they bought, winding down production and spinning them into the new Spotify studios. They hoped that spending big like this would pay off, but they soon discovered that their customers didn't care quite as much as they thought. Listeners did begin to listen to more podcasts thanks to Spotify's investment, but it just wasn't enough to make them choose Spotify over anyone else. This isn't the end for Spotify and podcasts though, with the company insisting that they're entering the third phase of the podcast evolution. They might have wound down their expectations regarding differentiation, but they still have big plans for their advertising and creator tools division. When discussing the closure of Gimlet and the other studios, Spotify emphasized that they were continuing to use their data and product division to continue providing more advertising support and tools to creators. Essentially, they want to go from a Netflix model to a YouTube model. Rather than them being the service which creates and owns the content, they want to help creators make it themselves, taking a cut of that revenue no matter where it ends up. That might not help them attract more customers and differentiate themselves, but it does mean a growing ad business and may also help to push podcasts even further into the mainstream, boosting listenership and, in turn, solving the rental problem where this all began. Now, you just spent around 8 minutes watching a video to help you learn about the world around you, and that feels good, right? Well, that's the feeling you get from spending time learning and bettering yourself. And if you want to do this more, then we have good news. Long-term supporter of the channel, Brilliant, are giving the first 200 people who sign up using our link 20% off their annual premium subscription. Brilliant is an interactive online learning platform which is full of all kinds of courses, which can help you improve your career and further improve your understanding of the world. They have more than 100 courses on everything from predicting with probability to how technology works to the concept of infinity. And these may sound like topics that you need to dedicate a lot of your time to, but you really don't. You can master big concepts in as little as 15 minutes a day, and you can do this anywhere, anytime. You can find the link in the description below. Thanks for watching, and thanks again to Brilliant for supporting TLDR.